The grand assembly hall stretched endlessly in all directions, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent networks that carried conversations across species barriers. Hundreds of delegates filled the amphitheater, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. The Zephyrians dominated the central platform, their translucent bodies refracting light into prismatic displays of superiority. Each movement they made produced haunting harmonics that lesser species had spent centuries learning to interpret as the pinnacle of civilized communication. Chancellor Mystara raised forth her 6 arms, and the harmonic frequency that emerged from her crystalline throat immediately commanded absolute attention. The sound was pure mathematics made audible, a demonstration of evolutionary perfection that reduced crude verbal languages to primitive grunting. Around the hall, universal translators struggled to convert her meaning into forms that biological minds could comprehend. Esteemed delegates of the Confederation, her voice resonated through dimensional frequencies. We gathered to address the application of the species that calls itself human. The way she pronounced the word suggested something distasteful had touched her consciousness. The Korthari collective responded as one entity, 10,000 drones speaking in perfect unison from their biomechanical alcove. The individual-minded primitives seek recognition they have not earned. Their chaos-based society demonstrates fundamental evolutionary failure. The hive mind's assessment carried the weight of absolute certainty. They had analyzed human behavior patterns for decades, finding nothing but disorder where proper species showed unity. From the cyberspace interface pods, the Vex Dominion materialized their speakers through hard light projection. These beings had transcended biological limitations millennia ago, existing as pure consciousness within quantum networks. Processing time required for human thought: 0.3 to 2.7 seconds per decision. Our processing speed, 10 to the power of negative 12 seconds. Efficiency ratio, laughably inadequate. Their synthetic voices carried no emotion, only the cold mathematics of superiority. The ethereal conclave didn't need to speak aloud. Their thoughts manifested as visible aurora patterns in the hall's upper atmosphere, readable by any sufficiently evolved consciousness. Physical forms remain crude anchors for these humans. We observe them struggling with 3-dimensional limitations while we exist across 7. Their advancement ceiling appears permanently low. Chancellor Velthara's harmonic approval resonated through the chamber. Each species had contributed their expertise to humanity's evaluation, and the conclusion was unanimous. She began accessing the comprehensive file that had been compiled over Earth's recent centuries of space exploration. Military assessment indicates continued reliance on kinetic projectiles and chemical combustion for propulsion. Their largest vessels barely qualify as system runners, lacking any meaningful faster-than-light capability. The Zephyrian military attache's harmonic analysis included visual displays of human spacecraft, primitive metal constructions that looked more like industrial accidents than starships. The Vex Dominion supplemented with additional data streams. Cultural efficiency analysis reveals over 7,000 distinct languages, 12 major religious systems, and 195 separate governmental entities on their home planet alone. Organization level, pre-civilizational. Unity index, 0.23 on standard scale. Their biological limitations compound the problem. Added Dr. Valek to the Healer's Conclave, a species that had conquered death itself 3 millennia ago. Average lifespan, 80 standard years. Learning period required, approximately 25% of total existence. Knowledge retention after death, 0. They literally die before becoming useful to galactic civilization. Laughter rippled through the assembly in forms appropriate to each species. The Aquarians released pleased bubble streams. The thermal collective raised their internal temperatures by precisely 2.7 degrees. The rock singers produced low-frequency rumbles that would have registered as earthquakes on human seismographs. But the most damning evidence came from the Psionics Guild. Elder Mindweaver Arxos projected his thoughts directly into every conscious being in the hall. We attempted deep scans of human mental architecture during their recent diplomatic missions. Results: chaotic emotional overlays, irrational decision-making protocols, and most disturbing, genuine belief in concepts like honor, sacrifice, and dying for principles. Their minds process reality through sentiment rather than logic. Furthermore, continued Chancellor Mystara, they demonstrate concerning aggressive tendencies. Intelligence reports indicate they have conducted over 14,000 military conflicts on their homeworld in recorded history. They appear to excel only at destroying themselves and their environment. The Botanical Communion, ancient plant-based intelligences that communicated through chemical releases, expressed their disapproval through a cloud of bitter pheromones. Ecological management, catastrophic failure. They have driven thousands of their own planet species to extinction while poisoning their atmosphere. Their relationship with their home world suggests similar treatment of any worlds we might grant them access to. High arbiter nexus of the dimensional courts materialize partially into the third dimension to speak. Legal precedent remains clear. No species achieving less than 0.4 on the Kardashev scale may join the Confederation. Humans barely register 0.7 on their planetary development index. They would require several thousand years of guided evolution to reach minimum standards. The assessment continued with crushing thoroughness. The temporal observers noted humanity's inability to perceive beyond linear time. The energy weavers dismissed their crude matter manipulation technologies. The void walkers found their understanding of space-time laughably primitive. Every advanced species in the galaxy had reached the same conclusion. Humanity was not ready for galactic civilization, and likely never would be. Their diplomatic protocols alone disqualified them. Noted Ambassador Corvin of the Protocol Masters, a species that had refined interstellar diplomacy for 50,000 years. They send delegates who ask questions instead of demonstrating competence. They express emotions during negotiations. Most disturbing, they appear to believe their primitive perspectives hold equal weight to our accumulated wisdom. Chancellor Mystara began harmonizing the formal rejection frequency. This was the sound that would officially deny humanity's application, a mathematical proof of their inadequacy that would be broadcast across the galaxy. The decision before us requires no deliberation. Humanity's primitive nature, technological limitations, biological handicaps, and cultural chaos render them unsuitable for Confederation membership. The delegates began their species-appropriate expressions of agreement. Harmonic resonance from the Zephyrians, unified chanting from the Korthari, data stream confirmations from the Vex Dominion, and aurora patterns of approval from the ethereal conclave. However, Chancellor Mystara continued, galactic law requires we permit them to attend their rejection ceremony, though they are characteristically late to their own evaluation. She checked the dimensional chronometer. They should have arrived 6 standard time units ago. Perhaps they realized the futility and decided not to attend their own humiliation. But even as she spoke, the chamber's quantum sensors registered unusual readings. Something was approaching the station, something that didn't match any known human vessel signatures in their databases. The readings were confusing. The sensor technicians ran additional scans, but the results remained inconsistent with their expectations about human technological capabilities. The rejection ceremony would proceed as planned. After all, what could possibly change their unanimous verdict? They materialized without ceremony in the designated arrival alcove. 5 figures in simple dark clothing that seemed to absorb the hall's prismatic light rather than reflect it. No teleportation flash, no dimensional distortion, no harmonic announcement. One moment the space was empty, the next it contained humans. The transition was so seamless that several delegates didn't immediately notice their arrival. The human delegation consisted of 2 women and 3 men, each appearing to be in their middle years by human standards. Their clothing was uniform, dark, form-fitting garments without ornamentation or technological displays. No ceremonial robes like the Zephyrians wore, no biomechanical integrations like the Korthari, no hard-light projections like the Vex Dominion. They carried nothing but small, flat devices that could have been data tablets or communication units. Chancellor Velthara's harmonic greeting died in her crystalline throat. She had prepared an elaborate welcome ceremony that would have highlighted human primitiveness through contrast with proper diplomatic protocols. But the humans simply walked to their assigned seats with measured steps, their movements economical and precise. They sat down, folded their hands, and became perfectly still No introductions, no greetings, no acknowledgement of the hundreds of advanced beings surrounding them. They didn't even look around the magnificent hall with the wonder that primitive species usually displayed when first witnessing Confederation architecture. They simply waited. The silence stretched beyond social comfort. Chancellor Mistara attempted to restart diplomatic protocols. Welcome, representatives of humanity, to the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Confederation. We trust your journey was. She paused. The humans weren't looking at her. They weren't looking at anything in particular. They sat with eyes forward, breathing steady, hands motionless. Ambassador Corvin, of the Protocol Masters, stepped forward. His species had cataloged greeting rituals from 10,000 worlds. Surely these humans were following some obscure cultural practice. Perhaps they require specific recognition protocols. He transmitted to the assembly. He tried the formal Terran greeting he had studied. Greetings, humans of Earth. We acknowledge your presence in this sacred hall of governance. Nothing, not even a glance in his direction. The Korthari collective buzzed with confusion. Their hive mind had never encountered behavior like this. Individual beings always sought attention, validation, recognition. That was a fundamental flaw of non-collective consciousness. Yet these humans displayed no such need. They simply existed in their chairs, as still as sculptures but unmistakably alive. Dr. Valix approached from his medical station. Perhaps they are in some form of stasis or meditation state common to their species. He activated his bioscanners, expecting to find slowed metabolisms or reduced brain activity. Instead, the readings showed humans in perfect physical condition with neural activity that was not diminished but strangely focused. The Vex Dominion attempted direct interface. Humans, we are transmitting data packets on standard frequencies. Please acknowledge receipt. Their quantum communicators projected information directly at the human neural patterns. The data packets were delivered, processed, and ignored. The humans understood perfectly. They simply chose not to respond. High Arbiter Nexus manifested more fully into third dimension, his form imposing enough to command attention from any biological entity. By the authority of the dimensional courts, I demand recognition from the human delegation. His voice carried legal compulsion that forced acknowledgement from every sapient being within range. Every being except the humans. They continued sitting in perfect stillness. The atmospheric pressure in the hall began to shift as species-specific stress responses activated. The Aquarian's water-breathing apparatus bubbled faster. The thermal collective's temperature regulation systems fluctuated. Even ethereal conclave's aurora patterns showed disturbance wavelengths. Elder Mindweaver Arxos decided to attempt direct telepathic contact. His psychic abilities could penetrate any known mental defense, could force communication from the most stubborn consciousness. He focused his considerable power on the lead human, a woman with graying hair and calm features. The psychic probe struck something unexpected. Not mental defenses. Humans were known to lack significant psychic abilities, but something else. A quality of consciousness that was unsettling. The woman's mind was perfectly aware of his intrusion, perfectly capable of responding, but chose not to. More disturbing, her thoughts showed no fear, no confusion, no surprise. She had been expecting the telepathic contact. Arxos withdrew quickly, troubled. Their minds are disciplined in ways we did not anticipate, he reported to the assembly. They are not ignoring us due to inability. This is deliberate. Chancellor Mistara's harmonic frequencies began showing stress patterns. This was not proceeding according to any diplomatic protocol in Confederation history. Perhaps we should proceed with the formal rejection and allow them to respond to that stimulus. But as she prepared to speak, one of the human males checked a device on his wrist. A primitive timepiece by galactic standards. He looked briefly at the woman, who appeared to be their leader. She gave him the slightest nod, barely perceptible even to species with enhanced visual capabilities. The exchange lasted perhaps 2 seconds. No words, no telepathy, no harmonic communication. Yet information had clearly been transmitted and acknowledged. The precision of the interaction suggested a level of nonverbal communication that several species found impressive. How long do they intend to maintain this performance? Demanded General Draken of the military caste. His warrior species respected strength but despised games. If they seek to demonstrate primitive stoicism, they have succeeded only in proving their lack of civilized discourse. The humans maintained their silence. Minutes passed. The Great Hall, designed for the constant flow of multilingual communication, felt oppressive in its quiet. Species that communicated through bioluminescence found their patterns dimming. The harmonic specialist frequencies became discordant. Even the quantum-based consciousnesses of the Vex Dominion experienced processing irregularities. Chancellor Mystara made her decision. We will proceed with a formal rejection. If they choose not to participate in their own evaluation, that merely confirms our assessment of their unsuitability for galactic civilization. She began the harmonic sequence that would officially deny humanity membership in the Confederation. The sound was mathematically perfect, a frequency that conveyed finality with absolute precision. Every delegate in the assembly recognized it as the formal end of humanity's application. But even as the rejection harmonics filled the hall, the station's emergency systems suddenly activated. Warning lights began flashing in patterns that meant only one thing. Massive objects were approaching at faster-than-light speeds. The defensive protocols engaged automatically, blast shields sliding into position around the assembly hall. Panic rippled through the delegates as their universal translators began broadcasting the same message in hundreds of languages. Multiple unknown vessels detected. Fleet-scale formation. ETA 30 seconds. In the chaos of emergency alerts and delegate evacuation procedures, only a few beings noticed that the humans hadn't moved. They sat in their chairs with the same perfect stillness, completely unmoved by the crisis surrounding them. The woman who appeared to be their leader checked her primitive timepiece once more and smiled, the first expression any human had shown since their arrival. Outside the station, reality began to tear open as something vast approached through folded space. The station's quantum sensors screamed warnings as 300 human vessels materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. They didn't arrive gradually like civilized ships respecting traffic protocols. They simply appeared, surrounding the Confederation's most secure facility in an inescapable sphere of dark metal and purpose-built destruction. These weren't the exploration vessels or diplomatic ships the aliens had expected. Every hull was angular, armored, bristling with weapon systems that defied easy categorization. The ships looked like they had been forged in the fires of constant warfare, their surfaces scarred but maintained with obsessive precision. No decorative elements, no artistic flourishes that marked the vessels of advanced civilizations. These were tools of war built by beings who understood that survival required absolute efficiency. General Draken's warrior instincts recognized the formation immediately. Combat deployment. Perfect tactical positioning. They have us completely surrounded with overlapping fields of fire. His translated voice carried grudging respect mixed with growing alarm. These are not the ships of primitives. The Vex Dominion's quantum processors began analyzing the human fleet's energy signatures. The results contradicted everything in their databases. Power output levels inconsistent with known human technology. Detecting quantum containment fields of unprecedented stability. Weapon systems, classification, unknown. Chancellor Mystara attempted to establish communication with the fleet. Her harmonic transmission broadcasted on all known frequencies, using diplomatic protocols established over millennia of galactic civilization. Human vessels, you are in violation of Confederation space. Withdraw immediately or face defensive action. The response was absolute silence. The human ships maintained their positions with mechanical precision, their weapon systems trained on the station but not yet firing. The threat was implicit but unmistakable. They could destroy everything in the system and everyone knew it. The ethereal conclave's aurora patterns shifted to deep crimson warning configurations. We sense no hostile intent, yet their capability for violence is extraordinary. These beings have seen warfare on scales we cannot comprehend. Admiral Vorthak of the Defense Fleet activated the station's primary weapons. Particle beam arrays that could vaporize asteroids swiveled toward the human ships. I am authorized to defend this facility with lethal force. Human vessels, you have 10 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. One of the human ships, indistinguishable from the others except for slightly different weapon configurations, moved with impossible precision. It accelerated toward a small moon orbiting the system's gas giant, a dead rock that served no purpose except as a navigation marker. The ship positioned itself exactly 10,000 kilometers from the moon's surface and fired a single projectile. The projectile was small, perhaps the size of a human fist. It struck the moon at relativistic speeds, but what followed defied every law of physics the Confederation understood. The moon didn't explode. It didn't shatter. It simply ceased to exist. The matter converted to pure energy in a perfectly controlled reaction that left no debris, no radiation, no trace that a celestial body had ever occupied that space. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Valix, his medical scanner readings confirming what his eyes refused to believe. Complete matter-to-energy conversion with zero waste products. The energy requirements alone should have destroyed their ship, but the human vessel was unmarked, its system showing no strain from unleashing forces that should have been beyond any known technology. The other ships in the formation hadn't even reacted to their companions' demonstration, as if casual annihilation of celestial bodies was routine procedure. The temporal observers, beings who existed across multiple time streams simultaneously, experienced something they hadn't felt in eons: surprise. We observed this event across 17 parallel timelines. In every reality, the result is identical. This is not experimental technology. This is perfected science. A second human ship moved toward an empty region of space and fired a different weapon entirely. Reality twisted, folded, and a stable wormhole opened in the vacuum. The portal was perfectly circular, its edges clean and stable, connecting the system to somewhere else entirely. Through the opening, the Confederation delegates could see unfamiliar stars arranged in patterns that suggested distances beyond their current galactic region. The ship casually flew through the wormhole and returned 30 seconds later, having traveled what should have been years of conventional faster-than-light journey in the time it took most species to complete a sentence. Then the wormhole collapsed without trace. Space returned to normal as if nothing had occurred. High Arbiter Nexus's dimensional form flickered with distress. Space-time manipulation of this precision requires computational abilities exceeding our greatest quantum minds. Yet their ships show no external processing arrays, no dimensional anchors, no reality stabilizers. The implications crashed over the assembly like a tidal wave of revelation. Every assumption about human primitiveness had been catastrophically wrong. Their weapons weren't kinetic projectiles. They were controlled conversion of matter into energy. Their propulsion wasn't chemical combustion. They manipulated the fundamental structure of reality itself. Chancellor Mistar's harmonic frequencies became chaotic, producing sounds that our species associated with existential terror. If their technology is this advanced, why do they appear primitive? Why do their home system scans show such basic infrastructure? Elder Mindweaver Arxos attempted deeper scans of the human delegation in the assembly hall. What he found shattered his understanding of consciousness itself. They are not thinking like any biological entities we have studied. Their minds operate with collective precision while maintaining individual identity. They are each simultaneously aware of every ship movement, every weapon deployment, every strategic consideration. The human delegation still hadn't spoken. They sat in perfect stillness while their fleet demonstrated capabilities that reduced the Confederation's greatest achievements to children's toys. But their silence now carried different meaning. This wasn't the quiet of primitives overwhelmed by superior civilization. This was the confidence of apex predators who had no need to announce their dominance. The Botanical Communion released pheromones of pure fear. We had been evaluating the wrong species. They were evaluating us. Dr. Valix's bioscanners finally provided readings that made sense of human physiology. Their neural architecture is not primitive. It is optimized for rapid decision-making under extreme stress. Their shortened lifespans force accelerated learning that produces more innovation in decades than our long-lived species achieve in millennia. The Aquarians' bubble streams turn dark with recognition. Their planet's harsh conditions, their constant warfare, their biological limitations. These were not signs of failure. They were evolutionary pressures that forged them into perfect survivors. General Draken studied the fleet formations with professional admiration. Look at their positioning. Every ship knows exactly where every other ship is at all times. No communication lag, no coordination delays. They fight as a single organism while maintaining tactical flexibility. My species has warred for 10,000 years and never achieved this level of precision. The Vex Dominion's quantum processors reached a conclusion that their logic systems labeled as highly improbable but mathematically certain. Hypothesis: human technological advancement follows a pattern of concealed development. They deliberately maintain primitive appearances while achieving breakthroughs that exceed our capabilities. But why? Why would an advanced species pretend to be primitive while applying for membership in a confederation they could easily conquer? The answer came from the Dimensional Court's most sophisticated analysis protocols. Strategic patience. They studied us first, learned our strengths, our weaknesses, our prejudices. While we dismissed them as primitives, they were preparing for this moment. In the assembly hall, the lead human delegate finally moved. She stood with fluid grace that spoke of perfect physical conditioning, turned to face Chancellor Velthera, and prepared to speak for the first time since their arrival. The moment everyone had been dreading had finally come. The humans were ready to reveal their true intentions. High Arbiter Nexus manifested more fully. And if we refuse this offer? Okonkwo's expression didn't change, but her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you'll continue your slow decline into irrelevance while humanity expands beyond this galaxy. We don't need your permission. Admiral Kyra Okonkwo, the Terran Strategic Command, turned to face the assembly with movements that spoke of decades commanding fleets in deep space. Her uniform was simple dark fabric, but the way she wore it suggested authority earned through trials that would have broken lesser beings. When she spoke, her voice carried across the hall without amplification, clear and measured with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Thank you for your evaluation of humanity," she began, and the irony in her polite tone was unmistakable. "Your assessment has been thoroughly recorded and will prove valuable for our strategic planning." Chancellor Mistara's crystalline form trembled with harmonic distress. "You were listening to our private deliberations?" Admiral Okonkwo smiled without warmth. "Every word, every harmonic frequency, every telepathic transmission. Your secure chamber has been under human observation for the past 6 months. We know your defensive capabilities, your fleet positions, your supply lines, and most importantly, your weaknesses." The admission sent shockwaves through the assembly. The Confederation's most secure facility had been compromised completely, and they'd never detected the intrusion. But Okonkwo continued without pausing for their shock to settle. "Humanity has been watching the Galactic Confederation for over 2 centuries. When our first crude telescopes detected your civilizations, we faced a choice: reveal ourselves immediately and likely be destroyed by superior technology, or remain hidden while we learned everything about you. We chose patience." The temporal observer's aurora patterns shifted to show patterns of grudging respect. Strategic foresight across multiple generations. Your species planned this encounter before our current governments existed. Precisely. While you grew comfortable in your superiority, we studied every diplomatic protocol, every military doctrine, every cultural prejudice. You dismissed us as primitive because we allowed you to see exactly what would make you feel superior. General Draken's warrior instincts recognized the strategy immediately. Deception warfare. You appeared weak while positioning for strength. My species would consider this honorable if not for the overwhelming tactical advantage you achieved. Okonkwo nodded acknowledgement to the military leader. "Your species understands warfare, General. You'll appreciate that the greatest victory is won before the first shot is fired. We've been positioning for 200 years. Dr. Valix interrupted with desperate hope. "But surely this is aggressive posturing? Your fleet demonstrates capability, but your intentions remain unclear." "Our intentions," Okonkwo replied, "are exactly what we stated in our original application. We seek membership in a galactic civilization. However, we're no longer seeking membership in your confederation." The words hung in the crystalline air like a death sentence. Chancellor Mistara struggled to process the implication. "What do you mean?" "We're offering you membership in the Terran hegemony. The silence that followed was absolute. Every delegate, every consciousness in the hall, struggled to comprehend the complete reversal of their situation. The species they had dismissed as primitive were offering them a place in human civilization. Your confederation has existed for 12,000 years, Okonkwo continued, and in that time you've achieved remarkable stability. Unfortunately, you've also achieved stagnation. You become so convinced of your own superiority that you've stopped evolving, stopped innovating, stopped growing. Elder Mindweaver Arxos projected his thoughts with desperate urgency. You speak of our stagnation, yet our civilizations have achieved heights your species cannot imagine. Have you? Okonkwo's question cut through projection like a blade. When was the last time any of your species made a genuine breakthrough in physics? When did you last solve a problem that challenged your fundamental assumptions? You've been recycling the same technologies, the same ideas, the same prejudices for millennia. The accusation was devastating because it was true. The Vex Dominion's quantum processors confirmed what their organic counterparts preferred not to acknowledge. Their rate of innovation had declined dramatically over the past several thousand years. Humanity faces no such limitation. Our short lifespans force us to innovate rapidly or die. Our planet's harsh conditions demanded constant adaptation. Our fractured cultures created competitive pressures that drove advancement through necessity. What you saw as primitive chaos was actually evolutionary efficiency. Ambassador Corvin attempted diplomatic recovery. Even granting your technological superiority, what makes you believe you can govern galactic civilization better than species with millennia of experience? Because we understand something you've forgotten. Strength comes from diversity, not uniformity. Your confederation succeeds through rigid hierarchies and established protocols. Our approach embraces controlled chaos that produces breakthrough solutions. Okonkwo gestured to her silent delegation. These 4 individuals represent our diplomatic corps, military command, scientific leadership, and cultural advisors. They've been analyzing every word you've spoken, every decision you've made, every weakness you've revealed, not through telepathy or quantum processing, but through human intuition refined by generations of survival pressure. The botanical communion released questioning pheromones. What terms do you propose for this membership? Equal partnership based on merit, not age or previous achievement. Species that contribute to human civilization will be valued regardless of their origin. Those who cling to outdated superiority concepts will be left behind. High Arbiter Quell manifested more fully. And if we refuse this offer? Chen's expression didn't change, but her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then you'll continue your slow decline into irrelevance while humanity expands beyond this galaxy. We don't need your permission to build our civilization. We're offering you the opportunity to be part of something greater than what you've achieved alone. The delegates looked around the hall, seeing their magnificent chamber with new eyes. Every technological marvel they'd been proud had been surpassed by the species they'd dismissed. Every assumption about galactic hierarchy had been shattered in the space of an hour. Chancellor Velthera was the first to understand the full scope of humanity's strategy. You never wanted to join our confederation. This entire application process was intelligence gathering. Among other things, we needed to understand your decision-making processes, your cultural blind spots, your technological limitations. Now we know exactly how to integrate willing species into human civilization while bypassing those too rigid to adapt. General Thakron stepped forward with military directness. I speak for the warrior castes. We recognize superior strategy when we encounter it. The Thakron legions request alliance with the Terran hegemony. His declaration broke the dam of shock that had paralyzed the assembly. Species began declaring their positions, some accepting human leadership, others demanding time to consider, a few desperately clinging to their former superiority. Chen watched the chaos with satisfaction. In human culture, we have a saying, empty vessels make the most noise. Today, you learn the value of silence. She turned to leave, her delegation rising in perfect synchronization. Those who wish to join human civilization will find us reasonable partners. Those who prefer isolation will find us uninterested in conquest. We have galaxies to explore and civilizations to build. As the humans walked toward their departure alcove, the same seamless transition that had brought them now prepared to take them away. But Chen paused for one final statement. The Terran hegemony officially recognizes the sovereignty of all willing member species. However, we also serve notice that this region of space is now under human protection. Any species that threatens our allies will discover why we spent 2 centuries perfecting the art of warfare. The humans vanished as quietly as they had arrived, leaving behind an assembly hall full of beings who had learned that those who speak last often have the most important things to say. Outside, the human fleet maintained perfect formation as vessels from a dozen species began approaching with requests for formal alliance. The age of human dominance had begun not with conquest, but with the patient wisdom of those who understood that true strength lay in knowing when to remain silent and when to speak.